Okay, it's Saturday, December 22nd, 2018. I'm John Knox out in Picture Rocks, Arizona. I'm starting to lose the sunlight here, and I've got a few barking dogs off in the distance, but what I want to do is talk about the phrase, cultivate your common sense. And I'm going to use old barnwood quotes from Mark Twain, Richard Feynman, Hannah Arendt, and Upton Sinclair to make my point. So let's see if I can weave this all together, all right? Now, when I look at old barnwood and I start to work with it, this is what cultivates my common sense. This old oak floor joist, even though it's got a little water damage and it's a little crazed on the sides, I know exactly what I'm going to make with this. The great thing about wood is when you decide to make something, you have to completely visualize what you're going to do. You see the edges, you see the dimensions, you see how it's going to be fastened, you see how it's going to be functioned, how it's going to function, and how it's going to look when it's all done. This ponderosa pine barn plank, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this. I can't wait to get started. This piece of poplar, this stud wall from a piece of a stud wall from an old barn, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but I liked the way it looked, so I thought I'll bring it home. So, this phrase, cultivate your common sense. About a year ago I came up with it. I was looking at all the deceptions that all of us are flooded with 24/7, 365, and these deceptions to me were meant to divorce me from my common sense. And eventually I came up with this phrase that how do you stop that from happening? You do it by cultivating your common sense. All right? What I've learned with some of the discernments that I've made is I would love to talk about it to people that ask me the questions to start off with. If I volunteer it to somebody without being asked, the Twain quote comes to mind. It's easier to deceive a man than it is to convince him that he's been deceived. So the deceptions that are continuously raining on us from religious groups, from governmental organizations, from corporations, and from universities, these deceptions are meant to separate us from our common sense, and they're meant to get the very, very busy people in our society, the soccer moms, the little league dads, the ones who are winning at the game, who are on the treadmill, and they're just so busy that all of this media deception comes towards them, and they have a moment and they look at it and they go, okay, which is exactly what the media is being paid to do, all right? They want to get the reaction of the people to a certain point where there is no reaction. It's just dull acceptance. Hannah Arendt said, the true best subject for a totalitarian rule is not the committed Nazi or the dedicated communist, but rather people for whom the distinction between true and false, fact and fiction, no longer exists. So one of the ways to combat that happening, for me, is cultivating my common sense. Now, there are groups in this world that have answers, right? And Richard Feynman speaks to that. He said, I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. There are many corporations and religious organizations and governmental organizations that say, these are our answers. These answers are settled. And they've been agreed upon, the narrative is set. And if you question these answers, why, we'll call you an outcast or a conspiracy theorist, or we might even put you in jail. To me, anytime some group or organization tries to protect their answers, I automatically decide with my own common sense that they're hiding something and that they have a position which is meant to benefit them and not me. Because the truth doesn't fear investigation. I mean, when these organizations are trying to hide the dangers of 5G, electromagnetic frequencies and Wi-Fi, when they're trying to hide the dangers of vaccinations, when they're trying to hide the dangers of GMOs, genetically modified organisms, when they're trying to hide the dangers of solar geoengineering and stratospheric aerosol injection, when they're trying to hide the dangers of fracking and many, many, many other situations and many, many other processes that are being pushed at us daily. When these dangers are trying to be hidden, my common sense says, I want to find a better truth than what they're trying to feed me. And working with barnwood is one of the ways that I have of cultivating my common sense. So what I would say to you is, this is what I do. Find out what brings you rooted into a reality which is different from what the media is trying to say. Working with metal, working with the earth, working with plants, working with other people. Find out what it is for you that cultivates your common sense, right? Because I promise you, as every one of us cultivates our common sense and we go forward, all of us are going to find more and more and more reasons to stay curious.